Brandon Credeur, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor. Appreciate you.
The honor is all mine, I must say. You are somebody who I've been thinking about a lot recently over these last unfolding weeks because I just saw you present not too long ago at probably one of the last physical events I'll be at for a little while. And you had some incredible perspectives on sales and how to manage sales. And I think it's a great time to be discussing what that is and what that looks like. But I'd first like to introduce you before we get into the technical stuff properly. Can you tell me about a time in your life that has defined you and how you show up in the world today?
Boy, that's a good question. I think there's several layers to that answer. Obviously, for most people, there are probably many points in everyone's life that sort of defines them. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be one of the biggest stresses that I've ever had in my life, personally and in business. My wife and I, my business partner, Dr. Heather, I think you know, Kyle, we're functional medicine practitioners, and we were sort of first to market a long time ago, actually marketing out in the open as doctors of chiropractic, functional medicine services. And we built a very, very large practice. We had a lot of visibility. And long story short, we pissed a lot of people off in organized medicine within the state of Colorado as well as nationally. And ultimately, we were victims of what we now call fake news before fake news was actually a thing. And we had this huge negative PR campaign run against us that went on for weeks on end. It was very vicious and very hurtful, not only personally, sort of an emotional trauma when your character is attacked in so many different ways, incessantly over the course of many weeks and months, and I believe actually years. I mean, there was several news stories run against us, several lawsuits and regulatory actions. It was a real firestorm. And ultimately, we came out of that because we were doing nothing wrong, absolutely nothing. On top, we won at every single level, but it took us years and it cost us over $1 million to fight this against ultimately several lawsuits and government agencies in the state of Colorado. And I think that particular moment in time really stands out because for several reasons, it defines how I show up in the world. There was a moment in time where this was at its peak and we were feeling a bit broken. We were feeling a bit backed into a corner, could easily see that we could easily run out of money to defend ourselves. And it was one night, one evening, Heather and I were laying in bed looking at each other saying, what are we going to do? You know, we with our skill set and our ability, we could have done anything anything to go out and make a fantastic living for us and our kids. And we were asking ourselves, is it worth it? Is the fight worth it? And ultimately, we looked inside and we discovered and we always knew that what we did was our passion. It was our calling. It was from the heart, and we couldn't walk away from it. And I think that just solidified, what it is that we do. And we came out of it much stronger.
Wow. This hits home for me in a big way. I've been putting out some content right now on Facebook, just sharing different stories from my own life. And something that's inspired me recently that this is an overcoming story. And I think this is what people really are craving right now, is exactly the kind of story that you can tell. And a story of overcoming is when you face a challenge that is so big that it forces you at least once. You can't just breeze through it with your skills, no matter how great they are, but you have to go toe to toe with reality and be like, okay, I really, really want this. I want to still be doing this. There was a time when I was working for a startup, and I was about 3 months in, living in Thailand and working remote for the first time. Well, not really forced. I signed up for this job, but I was working for this startup, learning remote skills, learning how to live in a different country, and learning how to be in this company. And about 3 months in, I had a tremendous quota of good, high quality content I needed to produce, and I just wasn't meeting it. And every time I heard the little click, click, click of the Slack message, my heart rate started going up. I was getting stressed out just from the Slack clicks. And I was just seeing these messages where it seemed like my boss was pretty frustrated with me, and I thought that I was going to be sent home. I lived in Thailand working remotely because he lived in Australia, and the time zones are similar, and the whole company was remote. But at that time, I just felt like there was too much. And luckily, I'd worked with another one of the co-founders, and he helped me focus on just one step that I could take to make things better. But in the end, and similar to your story and how it turns out, the work I did then and the changes I made then became the foundation for the Story Engine, which is a book that changed my life and became the foundation for this business, this podcast, this conversation that we're happening right now. And and I'm sure you wish this right now, but like if you could send a message to yourself, kind of like laying in the bed, right then, about like, it would probably be something like, don't worry, trust yourself, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's the message I'd send to me. And it's what we need to hear for ourselves right now in these uncertain times.
I think you're right. Don't worry, trust yourself, believe in yourself and those that are closest to you, find your passion. And boy, I got goosebumps right now where I'm getting ready to say this one. Just let it unfold. Unless you're in a position where you've done something wrong, or you're in a defenseless position, or you're in a state where that you need to get out. Sometimes the only way through or the only way out is through, right? And a lot of times when we're in these situations, we fight it the whole way. There's a competitive fighting energy that we bring to the table when we're dealing with things. And what I would say to myself looking back, and it was a battle. At times I was in this space, and at times I was in the space of wanting to battle it out, right? Wanting to battle with my will. And just the message is, let it unfold. And if you are able to let it unfold, it takes a lot of pressure off, and you can then see the moves that you need to make. And if you're able to do that, when you get to the end of it, the thing that you create from it is way bigger, exponentially bigger than where you were when it started.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's tuning in. That the key right now is to be able to tune in and see what things people aren't seeing. And I'm feeling this right now. Or in the opposite way, I'm feeling the need to be trying a lot of things, making a lot of offers, making a lot of noise. And I think a lot of people have this compulsion to go in every direction right now. And holding still and listening seems like one of the last thing you want to do. But I think that it comes and I got goosebumps too, from this deep place of trust. And though what the world is facing right now isn't precedented, and my story of being overwhelmed in a job, or even your story of being overwhelmed in legal issues, it doesn't hold a candle to what everybody's experiencing right now. But it is the same. If we can teach that emotion, if we can show like, this is how you can go through, this is the message that you need to hear and trust.
The same principles apply.
Absolutely. So when I saw you speak at an event called Go Wellness a couple of weeks ago, you have developed this process for this amazing sales system that a lot of functional medicine clinics use to enroll and qualify new customers and overcome some of the big challenges that happen with high ticket sales. And I think it's fascinating. Functional medicine practitioners are a really good parallel to a lot of high quality entrepreneurs. You wouldn't think about it in this way, but I see what a functional medicine practitioner usually has: a high ticket offer, high ticket coaching with an involved service, but usually they don't have the levels of sophistication that an entrepreneur does. So if we can see what functional medicine clinicians are doing, there's a lot that entrepreneurs can learn from it too. I also think if they can communicate it well and get out of their own way of using all of their practitioner brain and start to get into a better communication, Tell me a little bit about your sales process and how you help people sell more, and maybe how that's changing in this world.
Yeah, that's a good question, especially the second part of that. I think my sales process, I think it's important to talk about what it was born out of. And it was born out of an intense amount of failure. Coming out of school, I was very clinically astute, very bright in that area, very confident and certain in my clinical ability to help patients, but very quickly learned that that would not carry the day, right? That would not put food on the table, that would not allow the rent to be paid, et cetera. And for a couple of years coming out of the gates, I struggled mightily, being told no over and over and over by patients that I knew I could help and save clinically. And so there was a double whammy, right? Where you're not only not getting paid right out of school when you have, you're trying to get your life started, but you're watching your mission sort of dwindle because of the people just walking out of your practice, out of your office that you could help. And it took quite a while for me to understand that the reason that was going on was nothing that was outside of me, because I had a propensity to blame everything external to me as to the reason why I wasn't getting the job done. It was the patient's fault. It was the system's fault. They wanted their insurance to pay and insurance doesn't pay, and on and on and on. And I finally got to the bottom of the barrel where a colleague of mine who later became sort of a mentor, and we still work together today to this day, basically had the balls to tell me the truth. And I shared my stats with him and told him I knew how to say everything. I knew all the scripts and this, that, and the other. And he said, if those are your stats, I can guarantee you don't know what the hell you're doing when it comes to sales. And for whatever reason, it landed on me at that moment in time just right. I was ready to hear it. I was ready to take action. And I dove in, and I realized that now I had to apply myself in business and in sales and communication as an entrepreneur, just as I had as a student. And that was it, man. I dove in and I started to learn all the tools and strategies and develop the internal power to be able to communicate with people in an effective way that allows them to do the thing that they need to do that's in their own best interest. And I think probably the main thing, and you sort of used a very key word when you asked your question, the main thing that all of this was based on was qualification. I finally developed the intestinal fortitude to flip the script on the situation, whereas before I was always on my heels, right? Being evaluated by the prospective patient as to whether or not they wanted to spend their money in my practice. And I repositioned everything, and I developed a process where it was super clear. It was made abundantly clear to them at every step, at every turn in my admissions process. Well, that's a whole nother thing. I actually built an admissions process,
Wow.
right? I actually thought about it, strategized, worked with the end in mind, and worked backwards and created a process. But they knew at every point in the process that they were the ones that were being evaluated, that I had a qualification process, that I had values and standards. Because if I was going to spend the amount of time, effort, energy, and put the money in, hang my shingle, take the loan out, etc., spend all of my time in the clinic away from my wife and away from my newborn kids, I wanted to be working with people who saw the world the way that I saw it, more or less, and who were going to go after things in their life kind of like I would go after them. And so I developed a set of values and standards, and I applied that to every single, and I still do today, and this is what I teach to my clients all over the country, to apply that positioning, that qualification process, and most importantly, the values and standards that you stand for to every single patient, and just determine if there's a match. So that's really the basis of the system that I developed, and it changed everything. I went from eventually being told no just about all the time. Like, my close rate when I first started was probably 20-30% at best. And I made it all the way to a point where it was a shock when someone said no. Like, I finally perfected the system and the internal skills to a point where virtually no one told me no. And obviously that changed everything for my business, for my family, but more importantly, it allowed me to fulfill my mission, right? Where I could feel good about that I was actually maximizing my impact in my community and the world.
Okay. So this is an interesting question I want to ask. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's I feel it deep in my belly. We're going to play two characters. You are you, and I am you in the past.
Hmm.
But I've traveled to this time now. Okay. So I'm past Brandon, and I'm talking to you, future Brandon. The problem is outside of me. The coronavirus has just hit, and nobody wants to buy from me. What do you tell me now?
Well, the first thing that I would say is it's never a situation where the problem is outside of you. I mean, the only thing we have control over when we're faced with challenges and responses is our response to the problem, right? Although there may appear to be an external problem, some challenge, if we look at it only as an external problem, we're at effect to the problem, right? And you're not. The only way that you're going to be able to respond appropriately is by controlling your response to it, both in your emotions and your thought process. Because when you get super emotional, right, especially negatively, your intelligence goes down. You shut off your brain. And when you shut off your brain, you cannot think about problems effectively. The solutions, the effective solutions will not come. So I think to a certain degree, we have to deal with reality and realize that the psyche of the masses, or the psyche of your market, or in my case, my patient population, may be a bit different now. But it's my job to figure out, or in this case, it's your job to figure out how your prospective patients or customers are thinking and feeling, and what message do they need to hear of why it's still important to consume and purchase your service. What value is it going to add to them? And dealing with things, right now in these times with the coronavirus, you have to be able to think about, well, what are the objections going to be? If you were to offer something to someone, well, what might they say in objection? And then think through each of those to come up with a plausible, reasonable thought process as to why those things are more or less not valid, and why they still need your product and your service. And we're having to do that very same thing in our practices right now in my consulting company, and supporting my clients. I mean, we're having to think strategically and creatively about how we can control our response and continue to add value to our customer base.
It's a big question for me, and an interesting balance to keep right now between offering the products and services because they're going to work, giving them a discount because it's just the time to give a discount, it seems like,
Yeah.
and then giving something for free, and just giving away as much for free as possible. And I feel like there's room for all of these, and you should be doing all of these things.
Yeah.
But are there ways or that you're helping kind of navigate the boundaries between this? I think there's probably, you could give too much of a discount and devalue yourself, and there's kind of some pitfalls in that direction. There's pitfalls in not giving discounts and just carrying on as you always have. How are you navigating this right now?
I think it's actually quite simple. I don't think you have to think too hard about how to navigate that. Certainly, you do not want to give your core services and products away for free. That certainly devalues it, not only for you, but for your customer. And anytime you give something away for free, or at such a significant discount, they're not going to use it properly anyway. It's not going to have the same value. I think it takes just having some consciousness around what's going on. I think just messaging and communicating with your marketplace in a way that they know that these are interesting times. So that could be, for example, in my practice, we've created immune supportive kits for all of our patients because we deal with a chronically ill patient population. And so they are in the highest risk category. So we had to think, okay, well, what value can we provide to our patients right now? What do they need? What would they like to have? What do they want? And with the messaging that they're being exposed to, it was very clear that they need a solution to their challenged immune response. So for us, all we did is we say, you know what, we're putting this together for you, and we're going to buy the shipping for you. So free shipping. And the reason why we're doing that is because we understand that we're in difficult times. So I think my point here is just being able to articulate that you have a clue, that you have a heart, that you're not just out running business as usual. Maybe there's a small discount, 10, 15%. That is literally attached to the times that we're in. You have to be explicit about why you're giving the discount. And something that most of your audience probably already knows is what can you add into the product or service or pair with it that you could give away for free that adds a ton of value but still does not cheapen your core product and service.
I like that a lot. And this hits on something we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but it seems like an excellent segue. So we don't want to over discount our core products, and we don't want to give everything away for free. We want to give value for free. But there's a lot of people out there that probably need something a little bit different from what their core product is right now to adapt and thrive. And I think you mentioned this could be an opportunity not to totally reinvent your business, but maybe to create a new product that can help with some resiliency if things like this happen in the future. Or not. There's plenty of reasons why having some digital programs and digital streams of income are useful. But yeah, can you tell me a little bit about what you think of this and the possibilities of maybe creating something a little bit new right now?
Yeah, I think that's the way most businesses should be thinking. I think a lot of people fall in love with the idea of a laptop lifestyle. They want to be on a beach making money, don't we all? And they may use this as an opportunity as they sort of move everything or most of the things they're doing to a virtual experience where they're thinking a little bit narrowly focused and like, oh, this is what my business is going to look like now. I think about it a little bit different. I think about, as you referenced, that we're going to create another business. So right now you may have a brick and mortar business like myself and my doctors, but it's not that we're going to shut the brick and mortar down because there's still obviously going to be a large segment of the population that will want to have that personal human to human in office live experience, which I think, especially in our business, has a lot to do with building relationships and creating a healing environment. I think you lose something in the digital experience. So I'm looking at it as a hybrid where we have sort of silos or verticals where we have our brick and mortar business that generates a certain revenue stream. And now, because of these times, we've been forced to think creatively, to be a little bit, develop some ingenuity with our business. And maybe it's a suite of online courses that your patients could pay to take that does something different than you do in the office. It could be branching out, and there are certain regulations around this for us, but branching out and being able to tap into a patient or consumer base worldwide that expands things for you a bit. So I see them as company A and company B, not as, all right, well, we're moving away from company A and we're just going to do company B. We're going to do everything virtual. I think that can be risky for a lot of businesses. I think that transition takes time, and I fear that a lot of entrepreneurs are going to use this as a sort of a hard stop from doing what they're currently doing that produces a certain revenue stream and then just switching over to a new virtual experience. And I think it could be devastating for some entrepreneurs that don't think that through. I think there could be a transition that needs to occur there.
Two big things I want to comment on. One of the things that I love that you're talking about that won't apply to everybody, but will apply if you have a business or a practice or anything of the sort out there, is you're not talking about this as a way to attract new clients. This is a way that you use to support your current clients, which I think, though we haven't quite said this out loud, yet. But I think it's really, really important to support and uplift current clients right now and make sure you're reminding them of the value you provide if you have them. But
Yep.
I do think, yeah, there's also plenty of opportunities to create a smaller virtual program for to develop leads.
Yeah, it's
Helpful.
interesting you bring that up. It was one of the first things I thought about once this started to really gain momentum, this whole economic shutdown and that everything we're dealing with here. My first thought was, okay, stay calm, relax, spend some time meditating. Let's let the thinking brain work. Let's be creative. What are you going to do for your clinic? Not from the perspective of being selfish, but I was thinking like, what can I develop in my own clinic that I can then push out and duplicate sort of done for you business systems for my clients? And the same thing I was thinking about our patients in the clinic. What is the most important thing right now? And you referenced it, it's to take care of the current patients, or in a lot of other people, their current customers. Because one of the things that you want to maintain is that relationship, right? What can you provide them now that will keep them connected to you, provide value to them in this time of need so that they continue to purchase products and services from you? You don't want to ignore that at all. Now, for us, what's interesting is we do a lot of prepays for services that we render into the future. And so for us, we're thinking sales, like not new sales, but retention. Because if we're not connecting with our patients and providing value, we could easily have a margin call in our business that would literally wipe us out. Right? So how can we connect with patients? So very quickly, we're connecting, setting up private Facebook groups, shooting videos, providing them with content, reassuring them that we're here for them, etc. Further building that relationship with them, letting them know we were not only here for you when you wanted to spend your money with us, but we're still here with you even more than ever, so that they felt comfortable keeping their money with us, but more importantly, understanding that during these times, they know they need us. They need us by their side to help guide them through this.
Something that came to mind in a conversation with one of my clients, the clinician I was working with right now, he asked me this question like, Kyle, if I'm spending all of my time now in this kind of low ticket offer that people are coming in, maybe a Facebook group, maybe I did suggest a community where you kind of can privately share your ideas and keep people updated, maybe provide discounts and things like that. And he was worried, well, what am I doing tying myself up in all these low value activities? And one of the things that I suggested that I think we can, if we get out of this fear and scarcity mindset and allow some creativity to flow in, is the fact, if we were creating these videos, what could you create in a live group coaching video and walk people through the next 8 weeks that you could then turn into a course that would be evergreen and continue to serve people? And though I think there's lots of needs that are very hot, that are very clear, that are very apparent at this time that you could speak to, that no matter pandemic or not, is going to be valuable and useful for people. So if you start to think, okay, how can I create something now that's going to create a little bit of cash flow, but then allows me another product or another stream of revenue in the long term?
Well, what you're talking about is something we talked about earlier. When you're in the shit, like kind of we all are, if you will just let it unfold and do the next step, then the next step, and the next step, you just do what's needed of you. You have the ability to repurpose that content, right? Sorry, I have things apparently open on my computer that are dinging at me. Apologize.
No worries.
But letting it unfold and realizing that what you create right now, as you're mentioning, could be repurposed into something, just a new product or service later. As well, I think sometimes that perspective can be a bit short-sighted, because you're spending your time and energy and resources probably dealing with lower price point, lower ticket items. But for me, I'm thinking like this: how can I keep my business open How can I continue to cash flow my business to a point where I can keep my staff, keep people employed? Because I know this is, relatively speaking, going to be a short-term issue. Now, the economic recovery is going to be another issue, but things will get back to normal. And I'm thinking, how do I solidify that relationship? How do I build a bigger audience? How do I create that goodwill so that when we get through this, my customers and prospective customers are looking at me like, man, that guy showed up, right? He was there. And that, what that creates down the road for you when you want to sell something different or provide even more value for a higher price point. I mean, think about the conversion rate on those people's, on the people that you touched during this time. I think that's a huge piece.
I entirely agree. And even like having the ability to lean in and even so much as make any offer right now, and say, hey, I can help you and it's valuable and it is worth the investment. Even though like I think a lot of people are afraid of like, oh, well, you can't be selling right now. But I think selling or offering or just even having a message that's saying out there, I can help. And I know, and it's worth it, I think creates the confidence. It creates this message that people are so desperate to hear. And even if they do not necessarily buy from you in this next week or two, when it feels, especially like in this moment about 2 weeks into this thing, where, you know, we're all figuring it out right now. But yeah, I think how you show up right now and how you serve, and this is not just in a free give it away way, but how you show up as an entrepreneur, how you sell, is going to define how people remember and associate with you for a long time.
I think a key factor is your intention behind creating a sale.
Mm.
Like right now, more than ever, if your true authentic intention is just to get money, people are going to smell that. They're going to read it. They're going to see it. It's going to be dripping all over you. But if your intention is authentic of like, you know, selling through service, knowing you have a product and a service that will help your community or your customer base, they're going to see that as well. So if you're pure and your intention is right and you're coming from a place of service, I don't think you have to worry too much about being seen as someone who's trying to sell in this environment. We haven't encountered that at all. I mean, honestly, with our patients, which was a concern when we start rolling out these immune kits, et cetera, we were concerned like, hey, like pushback about pushing money out there. Now, certainly we are selling a healthcare product, which is pertinent to the issues at hand. But I think they pick up on, hey, we're trying to help. This is something of value for you and your family. I think so as long as you're coming from that place, you're probably going to be pretty safe.
Awesome. Phenomenal answer. There's one more area that I wanted to discuss that we haven't gotten a chance to yet in terms of adaptability. You were having an event in Texas in a little more than a month from now, and it was something I was looking forward to attending. Most of my April was booked out with all kinds of events, and I was thrilled for it. But
Yeah.
you, like many people with events, have had to reschedule and adapt. What did that process look like and feel like for you? Where are you right now, and what does the future for your event look like?
You know, I just kind of took it in stride, to be honest with you. We sort of waited to the last minute. We could see the writing on the wall. We were hopeful that things would just blow over, but the closer and closer we got, it was clear as other big events were canceling that we were going to have to not cancel but postpone and reschedule. And part of me was, angry. Part of me was let down because I spent a lot of money, more importantly, a lot of time and energy. It spent 6 months marketing the event, building the audience, communicating, creating value, creating content, et cetera. And you feel like, man, all that momentum just stopped. And so I asked myself, okay, what can I do with what I have, where I am right now? How can I deal with the situation? And so I started thinking creatively. Here we go again, not getting emotional, not letting myself drop into anger, shutting my brain off. I allowed myself to be creative. And I started thinking, what are some ways I can still stay connected to the tribe that I've built up to this point? How can I continue to create value and content for them so that they're still connected to me, so that when I can reschedule that, they're like, great, I'm in, right? So I just had to think like positive about it. And how do you just extend the messaging cycle to keep these folks engaged, giving them things that they can do at home right now, giving them value so that they're ready to go when that event can be rescheduled.
It's a big challenge. It's something I've seen
Yeah.
with a friend of mine was having an event that should have started Friday and Saturday of this week. And yeah, things have had to change as well. And so she's planning a virtual version of the event for free that would go on during those days, and then has postponed the physical event. But yeah, that's a very big and very challenging question that I'm sure will be consistently unfold over the next few months, is how do we keep people engaged in this message? Very interesting time to be a speaker or events or any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see a lot of people moving towards putting on digital summits or more digital type events for the short term?
I, I,
Or
I think we're seeing that trend. What's really interesting, I talked to my marketing team and looking at the metrics. I don't know if you have eyes on this as well, but obviously the consumers are flocking to social media, particularly Facebook. The amount of people on that platform has exponentially risen, but oddly, the advertisers are retracting. So it's a huge opportunity right now, to be able to stand out, right? So the other thing I looked at is, okay, if my event's going to be canceled, not only what can I do to stay engaged with the audience I have, but how can I be proactive in building that audience still, right? It just gives me more time to market, generate more interest, generate more leads, new people into the pipeline so that I get more people at the event. So that's another way to think about it. I think it's sort of a two-pronged approach. It gives you more time.
That's awesome, Brandon. You've taken so many things that have seem so scary and creepy and unknown to people, especially in this time, and you've made it relatable. You've made it achievable, and you've done it with this calm, like well-grounded place. And I really appreciate a voice like yours in times like this. So I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to converse. Do you have any closing thoughts for us in the audience, and where can we go to learn more about you?
Yeah, I do actually. It popped right in. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably an entrepreneur. You're probably a business owner. And the thing I want to remind you, and even if you weren't, you're probably a parent. Someone somewhere, and probably more people than you think, look up to you. They're watching you to see how you respond, how you react, i.e., how you lead. And I think this is an excellent time to show leadership. And in these times, it doesn't call for panic. It doesn't call for negative emotion, although that is going to creep in. I know it has for me, and I've had to catch myself several times. So I just want to remind you that if you're listening to this podcast, whether you like it or not, you're a leader to someone. So I think if we keep that in mind and we understand that people are watching our reaction, I think it helps us put things into perspective, because not only is our reaction affecting us as individuals, but sometimes more importantly, it's affecting those around us, because you never know when someone's looking at you to get the clues as to how we should be responding.
Incredible. And where can we go to connect with you?
My website for my consulting company is thefmshift.com. It's THEFM as in functional medicine, shift.com. My personal email is drbrandon, Dr. Brandon at thefmshift.com. Probably the best areas to catch up with me.
Incredible. And that last closing thought really hit home, especially for me right now. And I appreciate everything you've done and everything you've shared. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Brandon.
My pleasure, Kyle. Thanks for having me.